Sabah everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I have for you a review of the P30 Pro. This device has been available for a few weeks now, and it is the natural progression from what we had last year with the P20 Pro as well as the Mate 20 Pro. And I say that because this device learned from both of those from 2018, and those were two of my favorite devices in 2018. Can the P30 Pro be one of my favorite ones in 2019? This is TK. Let's check it out. Like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to make sure that you're notified whenever we put out new videos about devices like this and other flagships on the market. The Huawei P30 Pro is the flagship of the P line of devices directly from Huawei this year. We have three different versions. We have the P30 Lite, the P30, and the P30 Pro. The differences, of course, is that the P30 Pro basically has all the bells and whistles that Huawei has to offer, even though it kind of lacks some things that are available in the P30. But today's review, we're focusing on the P30 Pro and what it has to offer. Starting off with the specifications, we have the Kirin 980. This is the first 7nm chipset that we have from Huawei or even on the market. Now, this is comparable, similar a little bit to what we have with the Snapdragon 855, and that's basically where the first 7nm Qualcomm chipset came out on the market. We have 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage in here, as well as the ability of expanding the storage using the nano memory here. There is dual SIM and single SIM options available depending on the market and where you get it. On the back, we have wireless charging as well as reverse wireless charging, similar to the things we had with the Mate 20 Pro, and definitely an upgrade to what we had last year with the P20 Pro. Now, the cameras on the back is slightly a different story here. They say they have 4 cameras on the back. In reality, they do have. There's 1, 2, 3, and then there's the 4th one right here. The 4th one is a time of flight sensor. It's really used for depth information as well as 3D gaming. It's not really meant to take pictures with it. So if this is hidden or covered for no reason, obviously if you make a mistake, there's no issues there, as these are the 3 main sensors that are going to be taking pictures for you. Now, here we have 3 different sensors. We have a 40 megapixel, all basically an f1.6 40 megapixel sensor. And we also have a 20 megapixel that's an ultra wide. So we definitely have here the standard focal length, the ultra wide, and then of course we have the telephoto lens here. And this is actually using a new type of technology, using a barrel technology, more like a telescope, where even though the sensor looks like it's sitting here, it's actually sitting in this part of the device, facing this way, going through different elements, lens elements, and actually being reflected here so that we're able to get up to 50-time hybrid zoom. The reality is we're getting up to 5-time optical zoom with this configuration and 10-time hybrid, and if we can go all the way up to 50. And I'll show you guys a couple of pictures here where I stood out and I took a picture using the wide angle lens, and then when we went there from the wide angle lens to the standard focal length, then jumped over directly to just basically 5-time optical zoom. Then we go into the 10 times hybrid zoom, and of course at that point we start shooting over all the way to the other side of the part, and we're at 50 times, and that gives us the ability of just basically utilizing the full potential of the lenses here. Definitely a big improvement to what we had last year, although we did lose the monochrome lens. Definitely a very nice combo here. The display that we have here is a 6.47 inch display, almost 6.5 inches. Now, this is a 1080p OLED panel. Unfortunately, we don't have Quad HD similar to the Mate line, but that's similar to what we had last year with the P20 Pro. We always had an LED, basically a 1080p panel on the front. Now, we do have some customizations as far as being able to turn on dark UI and the ability of customizing the resolution to drop it down to 720p to be able to save some battery. So that's one of the really cool things. The other option, of course, we have here under the hood, we have the latest version of EMUI, and that's EMUI 9.1. It still runs on Android 9.0. As I mentioned, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage, 1080p display. Now, my device did not receive the March update, although there is an update that's coming out, so it's just a matter of time, but they're supposed to be basically updated all the way to March of 2019. EMUI 9.1 brings in a lot of new functionalities, and one of them obviously is the ability of initiating the assistant by pressing and holding the power button, and that's something that's very nice, and that's built in. Of course, if I push the button a little bit longer, it'll bring up the basically the turn on and off and restart options. But this is very nice to be able to remap this button, similar to the way we saw it again on, let's say, OnePlus devices when they wanted to remap this. So at this point, on this side, the device stays very, very clean. We have the symmetric front and back glass. On the top, we have still the IR blaster because we do have a remote built into this, microphone and 2 antenna bands. On the bottom, we have the memory card slash SIM card. Now, this device only supports 1 SIM and 1 memory card. There is another option where it supports 2 SIM cards or 1 memory card and 1 SIM card. And of course, we have the USB-C for data, audio, as well as charge, as we don't have a 3.5mm headphone jack, and of course the bottom firing speaker. One of the things they did change on this device from last year's P20 Pro is that now you'll notice that the fingerprint sensor is actually sitting at the bottom of the display. It is an optical fingerprint sensor similar to the one we saw on the Mate 20 Pro, and it's not exactly the 3D one that we saw on the S10. So keep that in mind if you're comparing this to the S10. The other thing we'll notice at the top here is that we have a front-facing camera that's a 32 megapixel camera, but unfortunately no earpiece. There's no position for it, and that's because the actual sound is emanating from below the display, and it actually sounds pretty good. But because of that, we lost stereo speakers from last year from the P20 Pro, so that is something to keep in mind, as well as we also lost the LED. The notification LED that was present at the top is no longer there. But we do definitely have a much smaller notch here, only basically a teardrop notch to compensate for the camera sensor that we have at the top. The camera on this device is basically second to none. At this point in 2019, this is for photography, and I'll say this basically, this is going to be the best photography phone on the market to date. The cameras that we have in here with the ability of going up to massive amount of zoom, on top of the fact that it has 5 times optical zoom on this, is just fantastic. Subject isolation and the ability of going in there and customizing them, just looking at them, very, very, very nice. We have a dedicated night mode that uses just the RYYB configuration now. This is different than what we've had in the past. And as I mentioned to you guys, we have 1 time, 5 time, 10 time, and then all the way down, you can scroll all the way down to 50 time. That's basically the most amount of zoom that you can get in any kind of device. Of course, you don't have to necessarily use that. You can just jump back into it. We have portrait mode, aperture mode, photo mode, standard mode, of course. Video does have some of those optimizations that we saw before. That's the AI color, the AI blur. And I'll go ahead and jump in real quick for you guys, a few sample footage that I've taken directly with this device. So one of the main limitations of this device is the fact that it only does 1080p at the front-facing camera. Even though we have a really high megapixel sensor, there's really no reason for us to be even capped at this level. We do have 4K on the back, but again, only at 30 frames per second. We have a lot of modes on this camera. One of them is definitely the AI color, the ability to separate the color between the background and the foreground, leaving me in full color and making it more of a dramatic shot. But unfortunately, a lot of these features are only available on 1080p and none of them on 4K. Of course, one of the main benefits is the ability of using the ultra-wide lens whenever you're taking video. Now, handheld, this is definitely going to be the best experience because you can stabilize this video and use a little bit of a crop on it and still have a lot more in the actual video than just, your normal focal length. Of course, the really, really nice thing is the ability to actually zoom while you're in video. So here we are in 1 time, 5 time, you can see right there, and then 10 time, let it give it a second to optimize. And this is basically 10 times optical, well, hybrid zoom really with the camera on the P30 Pro. So switching over to 4K using the back sensor, there's not much really as far as stabilization. But again, using Google Photos or something like that, you could definitely appreciate the amount of information you have here. The only thing I wished is that they have actually 4K at 60, although I think the Kirin 980 is just not capable of doing it. And of course, as you saw when we went with the 10 times optical zoom in the video last time, we need something to stabilize it. So having it on a tripod will always be better for you. One of the other options that we have, obviously, is the ability of doing a background blur. Hopefully this is doing a good job of making everything in the background just blurred out, as opposed to just having no color. Now you just basically get a blurred out, automatically taken with the video on the phone itself, so nothing to do afterwards. As I said, definitely one of the best cameras on the market. Now, as far as capabilities and what we can and cannot do with this device. Now, on the front, we have a 1080p, well, maximum of 1080p as far as video recording with HDR support. On the back sensor, we're able to go all the way up to 4K, but unfortunately only 4K at 30 frames per second, no 4K 60 frames per second, although we do have 60 frames per second directly built into the 1080p version. But other than that, I think the reality of the matter is, I think for photography, this phone is going to be fantastic. As far as video and production, I do find that it actually does well when you turn on certain modes, and if you stay basically within 1080p, we do have AI zoom on this. We have some functionalities that work really good, and that gives us some really good stabilized footage, as you saw with the images and the videos that I just showed you. I think overall, from the sense of what we were expecting here, is basically for this device to learn from the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro from last year. So we lost the monochrome sensor, we gained the ultra-wide sensor, we have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, we have 40 watt support for the charger here to support the built-in 4200 milliamp battery, and we're able to charge this device super fast, almost 60 to 70% in about 30 minutes, so that's absolutely fantastic. As far as the UI, EMUI is pretty much basically more of a personal choice. If you like it, you're definitely going to be happy with it. I do have Nova Launcher installed here. I have nothing against EMUI, it's more so the launcher that this does not have a lot of functionalities. I like to be able to actually use gestures, and the ability also to initiate the Google, the feed without having to swipe for it. I can just initiate it this way. And of course, customizations up the wazoo using Nova Prime. For me, Nova Prime just basically definitely fits the bill, and that makes it easy for me to work on any device, regardless if it basically supports or it doesn't support an app drawer. On the device is actually pretty decent. Even though we have a single firing speaker, for the most part, this works pretty well. Just keep in mind that again, we lost the stereo speakers and there's no way of actually modding that to be able to be turned on. So overall, performance as far as the sound is going to be fantastic. Media consumption on this device will not disappoint you. We have a massive display, almost 6.5-inch display, and again, it's a 1080p panel. It's not bad. It's OLED, has really good colors. We have the ability of turning on dark UI mode. We have the ability of customizing all different things. We do have a couple of options as far as system navigation, from gestures, tree key navigation, which we have before, of course, as well as navigation dock. Gaming mode on here is very, very nice. You just need to go in directly and find under apps. We have a dedicated gaming mode on this device that utilizes the GPU Turbo 3.0. That's part of the EMUI 9.1 and enables us to basically get a better experience playing, let's say PUBG, Fortnite, games that are supported with higher frame rate. Now, we do have the ability of turning on game acceleration here, basic uninterrupted gaming, and of course mistouch prevention, as well as the ability of adding additional games. And again, very, very nice, very simple, very easy. We have the built-in native screen recording directly within EMUI. We have Dolby Atmos. We also have wireless projection, and which is really functional to allow us to use the EMUI desktop experience from our phone on a supported monitor that's on the same wireless network without using any wires. Very easy, and then of course your device becomes your mouse pad, so that just makes it very, very nice. Kirin 980 with 8 gigs of RAM, it will not disappoint you. There's no question that we have all the options and everything we want to be able to do, and of course the ability of installing all the applications that we want, take all the photos that we want, and again, we can expand the memory now on our devices using the nano memory from Huawei. So that's something that's a separate charge, and I'll show you guys a link for that in the description below. As far as the things that I did not like about the device, it's actually a very short list, and I'm not going to say I didn't like because they're bad. It's more so just a design choice. So for me, the loss of the notification LED was not needed. The fact that we went to an in-display earpiece as opposed to the earpiece that we had last year is just not needed. We definitely have seen it on other devices that they put together, where they're able to put the earpiece very nicely tucked in at the top and still get stereo speakers, still have a notification LED. And I feel like this is more of an aesthetic and maybe a move towards a new type of devices. But because of that, we lost stereo speakers on something that they basically boosted on every device they pushed out, basically the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro in 2018. And we lost it with the first device. So I'm hoping the Mate 20 Pro does not follow this suit here. The fingerprint sensor, I think it's overall more of a learning experience. You just need to start using it and getting used to it. It's definitely not as fast as what we had with the P20 Pro, but it's something that is definitely a move forward, as I believe that the front-facing sensor here, since it doesn't have a 3D sensor like the Mate 20 Pro, is not as secure as using a pin or using your fingerprint directly on the display. So that's something you want to keep in mind. If you're getting something like this, make sure you go with that fingerprint sensor. And the last thing that I'm not so happy about, it's not necessarily that I don't like the current setup, it's just that when we went to 4 cameras, I would have appreciated the 4th camera to be the monochrome sensor, bringing that back into the fold as we lost it with the Mate 20 Pro. Now, I do appreciate having the time of flight sensor. Since I had a chance to play with it with the View 20, I appreciate having that as far as basically augmenting and improving the photography and the portrait photography that you're taking with this device. So hopefully the Mate 20 Pro will bring the monochrome sensor again. That is definitely one of my favorite sensors. On top of the fact that these guys are very good, I just felt like that would basically make this a much better, well-rounded device when it comes to photography. It's a champ and it's definitely the best, but just definitely missing that monochrome sensor, that true monochrome sensor. The P30 Pro has a lot of things going on for it, and even with the short list of things that I mentioned to you guys as far as the things that I don't like, those are just me missing features that I had in 2018. You know, the stereo speakers, the LED, the monochrome sensor, and the fact that the P30 has a headphone jack and the P30 Pro does not have it, it's a little bit of a concerning here, because I would have felt like that would have made sense. Give all the bells and whistles to the P30 Pro. Now, as far as the earpiece and having it under the display, I feel like this is something that they're trying out with the P30 Pro, and I'm hoping it doesn't continue, because I really liked having the earpiece with the LED sitting at the top, and also the ability of having stereo speakers. It just makes the Mate 20 Pro so much more of a better experience as far as media consumption. Nothing's wrong with the bottom firing speaker when it's loud, it's a bottom firing speaker, and it's not a stereo, or even simulated stereo with the mids and highs and the low coming out at the bottom. So overall, I would recommend this device for anybody considering getting a brand new device, even if you're in the US, as you actually have the ability of picking these up directly from either B&H or Amazon and just getting them directly in the US. You don't have to go the route of the way I went, basically by importing it directly from the UK. Let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think of the P30 Pro? Have you picked up your own? Are you considering it? Have you used the Mate 20 Pro or even the P20 Pro from before? Because those were my favorite in 2018. And you know what? In 2019, the P30 Pro is definitely one of my favorite devices, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody considering getting a device. Like and subscribe as usual. Thank you very much for the support. Share it with any of your friends that are considering getting the P30 or P30 Pro. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video.